Right now, in the stillness of this moment, as these words find you and the rhythm of your own breath charts the quiet passage of time, something profound is occurring. It is not happening here, in the familiar quiet of your room, nor anywhere under the gentle gaze of our moon. It is happening in the shared immense present of the cosmos, but it is unfolding in absolute silence, in a place we are forbidden to look. We are, all of us, living through an event of extraordinary cosmic drama, yet we are denied a view. We are not even spectators in the furthest row. We are, instead, standing outside the Colosseum, listening to the muffled silence of a battle fought behind walls of fire. The wall, in this case, is our own star. Our Sunday, out there, hundreds of millions of kilometers from the soft blue-white glow of our planet. A solitary traveler is making the most critical turn of its entire ancient life. It is executing a maneuver born not of will, but of physics, a sharp gravitational pivot around the very source of power that now conceals it. For many months, the collective eyes of humanity have been fixed upon it. Our great mechanical irises on desolate mountaintops, our patient robotic sentinels orbiting high above the atmosphere, all were trained on this faint, incoming ghost. We tracked its pilgrimage as it crossed the invisible frontiers of our solar system, a smudge of light moving with purpose against the static tapestry of eternity. We measured its breath, the faint gases venting from its frozen core. We plotted its trajectory, a hyperbolic scar cutting through the neat ellipses of our familiar worlds. We built our simulations, our theories, our expectations, and now, just as it arrives at the climax of its story, just as it plunges into the crucible that will define its nature, the stage lights have become an obliterating glare. Our star, the engine of all our life, the anchor of our world, has become a veil. It has moved directly between us and our mysterious subject, flooding our sensitive instruments with a blinding, deafening torrent of photons. All our most advanced technology, all our accumulated precision, is rendered utterly useless. Our telescopes are saturated, forced to stare into the heart of a nuclear furnace, and the tiny, precious object we so desperately wish to understand is lost in the noise. At the moment of greatest importance, we are rendered completely, profoundly blind. We do not know what is happening behind that curtain of light. This is not the comforting, explorable darkness of the deep sky, the velvet blackness that invites our curiosity. This is the darkness of ignorance, an ignorance imposed not by shadow, but by an overwhelming, incandescent light. Is the traveler holding together? Is its ancient structure, forged in some unknown alien stellar nursery billions of years ago, strong enough to withstand the immense forces now stretching it to its limit? The sun's gravity is not a gentle guide. It is a violent, relativistic tidal force that squeezes and pulls, a cosmic rack testing the integrity of every molecular bond. And then there is the heat, an unceasing, unshielded blast of radiation, 1,000 times more intense than a summer day on Earth, boiling away surfaces that have known only the absolute zero of interstellar space for perhaps 1 billion years. Is it surviving this trial by fire? Is it cracking? The stresses becoming too great, shattering into a cascade of glittering fragments that will slowly disperse. Is it dissolving, its volatile ices flashing into gas, leaving nothing behind but a whisper of dust? Or is it holding? Is it demonstrating a resilience we did not anticipate? Is it emerging from that inferno, scarred and forever changed, but fundamentally intact? We cannot know. Not yet. And so, all around our planet, in the quiet control rooms of observatories and the digital archives of data centers, there is a strange, collective pause. The data streams that were, for months, filled with faint, precious signals, whispers from the void, are now just static, the overwhelming hiss of the sun itself. It is the ultimate cosmic cliffhanger, written on the grandest possible scale. We have tracked a messenger from the interstellar darkness, a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean from an unknown shore, and just as we reached out to read its message, it was snatched from our view, pulled beneath the blinding surface of the waves. We are left with nothing but our questions, our models, and a profound, shared sense of anticipation. The most important moments of this encounter, the moments that will reveal the true nature of this visitor, are happening right now, in a place we cannot see, under conditions we can barely simulate. The performance is at its peak, the climax is here, and we, the audience, are left to wonder What kind of story is being written in that silent, violent fire? And what, if anything, will emerge from the other side? This is the paradox of our knowledge. To see so far, only to be reminded that the universe does not always perform for our convenience. It does not bow to our timetables. It demands patience. It demands humility. It demands that we simply sit and wait and contemplate the unseen. The answer is not coming today. It is not coming tomorrow. It is hanging, suspended, in that silent, searing void just behind the Sunday. This unseen traveler, this fleeting subject of our intense and frustrated curiosity, has a name. It is not a name drawn from ancient mythology, rich with tales of gods and heroes. It is not a name that rolls poetically off the tongue. Its designation is, like so much in modern science, a code, a catalogue entry. It is called 3I, Atlas. It sounds technical, sterile, almost dismissive, a string of characters in a vast astronomical ledger. 3I / Atlas. And yet, hidden within that cold designation is a word, a single letter that transforms this object from a mere curiosity into one of the most profound messengers humanity has ever encountered. The 3 is simple. It is only the third such object we have ever confirmed. The Atlas is a tribute, the name of the Earthbound robotic survey in Hawaii that first sensed its anomalous motion, the asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system. But it is the I, that single capital letter, that stops the heart. That I is not a Roman numeral. It is an initial, and it stands for interstellar, a word so vast, so filled with implication, it almost defies comprehension. Interstellar, between the stars. This is the fundamental, paradigm-shifting truth of 3I Atlas. It is not from here. It is not one of ours. To understand the weight of that statement, we must first truly appreciate what ours means. Everything we have ever known, everything we have ever studied in our cosmic backyard belongs to a single, vast, intricate family. The Earth, Mars, Jupiter, the rings of Saturn, the ice geysers of Enceladus, the long-period comets like Halley or Hale-Bopp that return to us like prodigal children, the countless asteroids in the belt, all of it, every grain of dust, every frozen molecule of water, was born from the same spinning, collapsing cloud of primordial gas and dust, 4.5 billion years ago. They are all siblings, formed from the same elemental reservoir, all bound by the same gravitational tether to the same parent star. Our Sunday, they share a chemical DNA. When we study them, we are, in a very real sense, studying ourselves. We are learning the story of our own origins. But 3I, Atlas. 3I, Atlas, is not a sibling. It is not a cousin. It is not part of our family in any way. It is a stranger, a true, literal alien, not perhaps in the sense of biology, but in the deepest, most fundamental sense of origin. The atoms in its body were not forged in the same crucible as ours. The ice frozen in its core was not condensed from our solar nebula. It was born somewhere else, in a different system, orbiting a different unknown star, a star that is, to us, just another anonymous point of light in the galactic sprawl. This is the abyss from which it sends its greeting. The Vuktham is not a place, but a state. It is the incomprehensible, unimaginable cold and dark of the great void between the stars. For eons, this object has been a wanderer in that void. We cannot know its full story. Was it born in a stable, placid system, gently nudged out by a planetary migration, or was it violently ejected, a piece of shrapnel from a cataclysmic event, perhaps the death of its own star in a supernova? We can only guess, but we can imagine the journey. An eternity of drifting, millions, perhaps tens of millions, perhaps billions of years, tumbling in a darkness so complete, so silent, that our entire solar system, our sun, our planets, our entire history was just one of countless distant, meaningless pinpricks of light. For all that time, it was preserved in the perfect cryosleep of absolute zero, a pristine capsule of its native chemistry. And then, by the sheer, blind lottery of celestial mechanics, its lonely, hyperbolic path intersected with ours. Out of all the stars in the galaxy, its trajectory brought it here. After an age in the cold, it has plunged, as we discussed, into the fire. This, then, is why its presence is so momentous. It is not just a rock, not just another comet. It is a sample. It is a piece of another world, delivered directly to our doorstep, postage paid by gravity. It carries the chemical fingerprints, the isotopic signatures, the physical clues of its birthplace, a birthplace we will never see, a star we may not even be able to identify. It is a message in a bottle, washed ashore from an unknown continent across the vast, dark ocean of the galaxy. This is why the silence from behind the sun is so agonizing. We are not just watching a celestial event. We are witnesses to the unwrapping of a priceless ancient gift, and the unwrapping is being done by a blowtorch. The very act of observing it, of having it come close enough to observe, is also the act that is fundamentally, violently, and irrevocably destroying it. Or is it? We are watching our sun both illuminate and annihilate this messenger, all at once. And that single letter, I, changes everything. It changes the stakes. It elevates this from a simple astronomical observation to a fleeting, precious encounter with the galaxy itself. This is not our property. It is a visitor, a pilgrim, and we, the inhabitants of this small blue oasis, are left to wonder at the sheer, improbable luck of being here, right now, to witness its arrival. It is a greeting from the deep, a physical hello from a place so distant in both space and time that it challenges the very limits of our imagination, and before it vanishes forever, back into the abyss from which it came, we have one burning question, a question that is being answered, unseen, at this very moment. This unseen answer, this verdict being written in fire behind the veil of the sun, is not a gradual, gentle process. It is a climax, a sudden, violent, and definitive test. According to our best calculations, in approximately 72 hours, 3I, Atlas, will reach its perihelion. This is the fulcrum of its journey. The word itself, perihelion, near the sun, sounds deceptively simple, almost serene. But for this object, it is a word that signifies an ordeal beyond our terrestrial comprehension. It is the moment of maximum stress, the absolute peak of the gravitational and thermal storm it has been flying into for decades. It is, quite simply, the trial of its life. For all the eons it spent drifting in the interstellar dark, it was in a state of perfect preservation, a state of equilibrium with the void. Now, it is being subjected to the most extreme forces our solar system can muster. It is a test, and the question hanging in the charged silence of every observatory, the question that is the very heart of this entire encounter, is devastatingly simple. Will this interstellar pilgrim, this ancient, frozen messenger, survive? Will it endure this passage through the furnace? Or will the very forces that drew it here be the forces that annihilate it? This is not a rhetorical question. It is a question of applied physics, a question whose answer depends entirely on the unknown, unknowable properties of the object itself. What is it made of? How is it held together? We have our models, our spectral readings from a distance, but we do not know. We do not know its true density, its tensile strength, the composition of the ices that bind its rocky skeleton. We do not know the nature of the hearth where it was forged, and so we are left to contemplate the forces it is facing, right now, in this final, critical approach. First, there is the fire, the sheer, overwhelming bath of radiation. It is now closer to the sun than the orbit of Mars, and plunging inwards, the sunlight it endures is not the gentle warmth that kisses our own atmosphere. It is a relentless, ionizing blast. This radiation is a solvent, sublimating X that have been frozen solid for perhaps longer than our own Earth has existed. Primeval reserves of nitrogen, carbon monoxide, and perhaps even stranger, more exotic volatiles are flashing directly from solid to gas, erupting from its surface in violent, outgassing jets. These jets act like uncontrolled rocket thrusters, pushing and spinning the object, adding yet more stress to its structure. The surface that knew only the touch of stray cosmic rays is now being scoured, boiled, and fundamentally rewritten. And then there is the giant, the force of gravity. This, even more than the heat, is the true executioner of comets. It is not a uniform pull. The sun is pulling on the front side of 3I, Atlas, the side nearest to it, with significantly more force than it is pulling on the back side, This differential is known as a tidal force. It is the same force that our moon uses to raise the oceans on Earth, but magnified thousands of times. This force is actively, physically trying to stretch the object. It is a cosmic rack. It seeks out every internal flaw, every microfracture, every weak seam in its ancient structure. If 3I Atlas is a loose agglomeration of ice and gravel, a dirty snowball, as comets are often called, these tidal forces will simply pull it apart. It will be drawn and quartered by the invisible hand of gravity. Our own solar system's comets, those that make this journey regularly, are the survivors. They are the ones strong enough, or lucky enough, to have endured this test before. But 3I Atlas, this is its first and only time. It is a novice facing the ultimate trial. It has no history of survival to reassure us. So this is the great question. This is the 72-hour enigma. When it swings around the sun and begins its long, silent journey back out into the void, when it finally emerges from the sun's glare in late November, and we can once again train our telescopes upon its patch of sky, what will we see? Will our instruments detect a single, faint point of light, perhaps diminished, perhaps scarred, but whole? Will we see an object that faced the dragon and emerged, carrying the secrets of its resilience? Or will there be nothing? Will we search that patch of sky and find only the faint, fading signature of expanding dust, the ghost of a dissolved object, its message forever lost, its body sacrificed to the star it came to visit? Or perhaps we will see a third, more revelatory outcome. Not one object, but many. A string of pearls, a chain of smaller, glittering fragments, the shattered remnants of a body that was not strong enough to hold itself together. It is a profound cosmic metamorphosis, happening completely in secret. It will enter that unseen inferno as one thing, a singular, mysterious entity we have labeled 3I Atlas. But what precisely will come out from the other side? The answer to that question will tell us more than 1,000 simulations. It will be the definitive, physical verdict on the nature of this impossible visitor. The universe is about to give us its answer, and all we can do is wait. To truly comprehend the profound drama of this unseen moment, to feel the full weight of the silence as we wait for this verdict, we must first step back. We must, in our minds, journey far beyond the fire and the light, and even beyond the object itself. We must ask a more fundamental question. Why do we wait with such bated breath? We have seen comets before. We have seen them approach the sun. We have seen them perform, and we have seen them die, disintegrating into celestial dust. The fall of a comet, while beautiful, is a familiar chapter in the story of our solar system. Why then this collective, global pause for 3I Atlas? Why does this one small traveler, hidden behind a glare, command such a profound sense of awe and anxiety? The answer lies in the origin. It lies in the difference between the familiar and the other. To grasp this, we must first define our own home, not as a planet, but as a cosmic domain. Imagine our solar system not as a collection of worlds, but as a single, vast and ancient house, a walled garden. Everything inside this garden, the Earth, with its oceans and continents, Mars, with its red dust and silent canyons, Jupiter, a swirling giant of gas, surrounded by its court of moons, even the most distant, frozen worlds of the Kuiper Belt, and the ethereal, ghostly sphere of the Oort cloud that forms the garden's outermost wall. All of it, every planet, every moon, every asteroid, every grain of ice, was born from the same primordial material. 4.5 billion years ago, a single vast interstellar cloud of gas and dust collapsed under its own gravity, and in its spinning, condensing heart, our sun was born. The leftovers, the spinning disk of debris, became everything else. We are all, therefore, family. We share a chemical inheritance, a solar DNA. The iron in your blood and the iron in the core of Mars were forged in the same ancestral supernovas and mixed in the same stellar nursery. The water in our oceans and the ice in a comet from the Oort cloud share a common origin. When we study these objects, we are studying our own heritage. We are holding a family album, looking at distant frozen cousins, but family nonetheless. All of it is gravitationally bound to our Sunday. Even the comets from the Oort cloud, That misty, frozen shell a light year across are still ours. They are on a million-year leash, held fast by the sun's immense, invisible influence. They are the residents of the most distant suburbs, but they are still, fundamentally, part of our city. This is our normal. This is the known. 3i, Atlas, is not from this garden. It is not our cousin. It is not part of our city. It is not in any way ours. That letter, I, for interstellar, signifies that it has breached the wall from the great outside. It comes from the dark, the unimaginable, almost philosophical void between the stars. This is not just a place of emptiness. It is the ocean, and our solar system, along with every other star system, is merely an island, a small, flickering campfire of light and warmth in a truly galactic night. For millennia, we have stared at those other campfires, those other stars, and wondered what they were like. We wondered if they, too, had planets, if they had their own families of worlds. We could only look and speculate from an impossible distance. We can never travel to those islands. They are separated from us by gulfs of space and time so vast that our minds can scarcely contain the numbers. A journey to even the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, would take our fastest current spacecraft over 70,000 years. We are, in a very real sense, marooned on our own island. And then, something impossible happened. The ocean washed something ashore. In 2017, humanity was awoken. We detected one eye, Oumuamua. It was the first. A faint, fast-moving streak of light, but its trajectory was undeniable. It was not in a closed orbit, bound by the Sunday. It was on a hyperbolic path. It had come from outside, and it was heading back outside. It was a true interstellar object. Oumuamua was a profound shock. It was a riddle. It was tumbling strangely. It reflected light in bizarre ways, and it showed no cometary tail. It looked like a dry, rocky, inert thing. A cosmic shard. A messenger that refused to speak. It passed by, and it was gone, leaving us with more questions than answers. Then, just 2 years later, 2i, Borisov arrived. And Borisov was different. It looked familiar. It was a comet. It had a fuzzy coma, a tail of outgassing ice. It was a dirty snowball, just like our comets. This was a revelation of a different kind. It told us that our solar system is not unique. It suggested that other star systems also have Oort clouds, that they also build icy bodies, that the chemistry of life, of water and carbon, might be common. Borisov was the first piece of another star system we could actually study, and it was strangely, beautifully, comfortingly, normal. And that brings us to 3i, the third piece of driftwood from that unknown ocean. And this is why the drama is so acute. Because as we began to study this object, as it drew nearer, we realized it is not like Oumuamua, the silent stone, and it is not like Borisov, the familiar snowball. It is something else, something new, something deeply, profoundly strange. This is the context. This is the foundation for our vigil. We are not just watching a comet. We are watching the trial by fire of an alien artifact. And I use that word not to imply intelligence, but in its truest, deepest sense, a thing from another Genesis. We are about to find out what it is made of. We are about to test the engineering, the natural engineering, of a different star system. We are asking it, what kind of stellar nursery builds an object like you? What violent forces exiled you? How strong, how resilient is the material from a place we will never know? The answer to, will it survive, is not a simple yes or no. It is a data point on the universe itself, perihelion. It is a word that rings with the cold precision of celestial mechanics, a term for a specific point on a graph, a mathematical coordinate of closest approach. In our textbooks, it is marked with a simple Q, but in physical reality, in the lived experience of an object plunging towards a star, perihelion is not a word of placid geometry. It is a word of violence. It is not a location. It is a trial. It is a gauntlet. It is, as the outline of this story suggests, a crucible, a luoyuan. And what is the purpose of a crucible? It is not merely to heat. It is to test, to separate the impure from the pure, to discover the breaking point. to burn away everything that is superficial and reveal the true, fundamental nature of the substance within. This is the ordeal that 3i, Atlas, is now entering. It is an ordeal of two parts, a test administered by two simultaneous, relentless tormentors, fire and the giant. First, let us contemplate the fire. The journey of this object has been one of unimaginable thermal shock. For the eons of its interstellar drift, it existed in a state of near-perfect stasis, bathed in the faint, ambient microwave glow of the universe, a temperature of just 2.7 degrees above absolute zero. It was a cold so profound, so complete, that the very concept of heat was non-existent. The molecules of its body were locked in a rigid, crystalline lattice, sleeping a sleep of billions of years. Then it entered our system, and it began to fall. Not just fall, but accelerate, plunging inwards, downhill towards the vast gravitational furnace at our center. In the span of just a few years, a cosmic eye blink, its environment has changed from the absolute cold of the void to an inferno. As we discussed, this is not a gentle warming. It is not a thaw. It is a flash boil. It is an ablation. The unshielded, unfiltered radiation of the sun is a physical, sandblasting wind of high-energy photons. It strikes the surface, a surface that has perhaps never known any light stronger than a distant, blue-white star, and it does not melt the ice. It detonates it. The ice sublimates, flashing instantly from a deep frozen solid to an expanding, superheated gas. This process is not gentle. It is a series of explosions, ripping material from the comet's body. These explosions, these jets of outgassing material, are the source of the coma and the tail that make a comet beautiful. But they are also a profound structural threat. They erupt unevenly from fissures and weak points, acting like chaotic, unpredictable rocket engines. They spin the object up, they impart torque, they create shearing forces. The object is being cooked, and it is being shaken, all at once. And then there is the giant. This is the second, and perhaps the more insidious, executioner. Gravity. We think of gravity as a simple, uniform pull that holds us to the Earth and keeps the planets in their orbits. But at this proximity, at this scale, it is a far more complex and violent force. The sun is not a point of gravity. It is an immense sphere, and it is pulling on 3i, Atlas, not as a single object, but as a collection of quadrillions of particles. And it does not pull on them all equally. The part of 3i, Atlas, that is facing the sun, its face, is millions of meters closer to the sun's core than its back. In this intense gravitational field, that small distance makes a huge difference. The sun is pulling on the face of the comet with far, far more impatience than it is pulling on its tail. The result is a force of stretching, a constant, immense, invisible hand, grabbing the object at both ends and pulling. This is the tidal force. This is the cosmic rack. This force is the true killer of comets. It cares nothing for heat. It cares only for structural integrity. It probes the object, seeking its deepest, most ancient flaws. It tests the primordial glue that has held this alien conglomeration of ice and rock together since its birth. If 3i, Atlas, is a solid, monolithic piece of interstellar rock, it might, perhaps, withstand this. But we know it is not. We know it has ices. If it is, like our own comets, a rubble pile, a loose federation of boulders, gravel, and ice, held together by their own feeble, mutual gravity and a matrix of frozen gas, then this tidal force will simply and cleanly pull it apart. It will dismantle it, piece by piece. The great comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, which spectacularly crashed into Jupiter in 1994, was first destroyed in this exact way. It passed too close to Jupiter, and the tidal forces of that giant planet tore it into more than 20 pieces, a string of pearls that then met their doom. 3i, Atlas, is now facing the same, but hotter, version of that same test, administered by the sun itself. This is the crucible, an oven blazing with radiation, and a rack stretching it to its breaking point. And all of this is happening at a truly inconceivable speed. As it falls toward perihelion, 3i, Atlas, is accelerating to its maximum possible velocity, a speed of perhaps 200,000 kilometers per hour. It is not sitting in this oven, it is being fired through it, like a bullet. This combination of heat, tidal stress, and kinetic violence is the ultimate non-negotiable test of its material. It is a test of its origin. Was it born in a gentle, stable system, or in a violent one, forged from material that had to be strong to survive? This is the answer the crucible will provide. This inferno, is what we mean by perihelion. It is the reason we wait. It is the filter, and it is the one thing that separates what we knew about the object from what we are about to learn. This crucible is not, however, an empty one. This test of fire and gravity is not a new performance, staged for the first time for this one alien visitor. We have seen this play before. We are, in fact, intimately familiar with its cast. Our solar system has its own vast and ancient population of objects that make this same perilous pilgrimage. We have studied them for centuries. We have woven them into our myths, our folklore, our science. They are the comets of our own history, the celestial ghosts of our own family. They are the comets like Halley, our faithful, clockwork prodigal son, returning every 76 years, a reassurance that the universe is orderly. They are the comets like Hale-Bopp, a majestic, silent brushstroke that adorned our night sky for an impossibly long 18 months, a spectacle of serene, cold beauty. When we see one of these objects approaching the sun, we are not, as we are now, suspended in a state of profound ignorance. We are not grappling with a true unknown. We are, instead, watching a familiar, if magnificent, celestial ritual. We have a lifetime of shared experience. We have a baseline. We have an established, deeply understood, Trang Thai Bin Thung, a state of normal. This normal is, in itself, a story of cosmic wonder. Our comets, are the most ancient, pristine, and untouched members of our solar system. They are the truest time capsules. They are the leftovers from creation 4.5 billion years ago, when the great cloud of gas and dust that would become our home collapsed, and the planets began to form, when the Earth and Mars and Jupiter were coalescing from the swirling primordial disk. This is the material that was left behind. It is the cosmic debris, the unused building blocks, the primordial rubble. Through the complex gravitational dance of the newborn giant planets, this rubble was flung outwards, ejected from the warm inner regions to the absolute, frozen fringes of the sun's influence. It was banished to two vast, cold, dark reservoirs. The first is the Kuiper Belt, a flattened ring of icy bodies out beyond the orbit of Neptune, a place where Pluto lives. The second, and far, far larger, is the Oort cloud. This is not a belt, it is a sphere, a vast, ethereal, ghostly halo of perhaps 1 trillion frozen objects, encasing our entire solar system like a delicate cosmic eggshell. It is a structure so immense that it extends almost a light year into the dark, halfway to the nearest star. This is the deep freeze. This is the place of absolute stasis. Here, these objects have slept, undisturbed, in a cold of nearly absolute zero, for billions of years. They are the sleeping ghosts of our own birth. And we know what they are. We have a beautifully, if inelegantly, descriptive name for them: dirty snowballs. Or perhaps more accurately, icy rubble piles. They are not, by and large, solid, monolithic boulders. They are fragile, porous, loose agglomerations of water ice, frozen methane, frozen ammonia, carbon dioxide, all the frozen gases of the outer system, mixed with the dark, carbon-rich dust and gravel of the early solar nebula. They are held together by their own feeble, mutual gravity and the icy matrix that binds them. They are fragile. And so, when normal begins, when one of these sleeping ghosts from the Oort cloud is gravitationally nudged, perhaps by the passing of a nearby star or the slow, grand tide of the Milky Way galaxy itself, it begins the journey. A long, slow, million-year fall, downhill towards the Sunday. And as it falls, it follows the script of normal. As it passes the orbit of Jupiter, the sun's warmth, still faint but no longer negligible, begins to stir it. The most volatile ices, the frozen nitrogens and carbon monoxides, begin to heat. They do not melt. In the vacuum of space, they sublimate. They flash directly from a solid into a gas. This gas, escaping from the surface, begins to bloom around the solid nucleus. It creates a vast, fuzzy, glowing atmosphere. A coma, often larger than the planet Jupiter itself. This is the first act. As it plunges deeper, the crucible's work, which we described, truly begins. The solar wind, the relentless stream of charged particles from the sun, strikes this new gas, ionizes it, and causes it to glow with a haunting, ethereal, blue light. This forms the ion tail, a streamer of gas that always, under all circumstances, points directly away from the sun, a perfect, cosmic windsock. At the same time, the pressure of sunlight itself, the physical push of photons, begins to act on the heavier particles, the grains of dust and grit released by the sublimating ice. This pressure pushes the dust away, creating a second, more diffuse, more gently curved dust tail, which glows a soft, reflected yellow-white. Is the normal state. This is the grand, silent, beautiful performance we have come to expect. It is the creation of the two tails, the blossoming of the coma. It is the predictable, understandable, and magnificent response of our solar system's material to the fire of our Sunday. But there is another normal, a second, and equally understood, ending to the play. Failure. Because we know these objects are fragile. Because we know they are icy rubble piles. We are never truly surprised when they die. Often, the tidal forces, that gravitational rack, prove to be too much. The thermal shock is too great. The chaotic, spinning jets tear the nucleus apart. We have seen this many times. The Great Comet Ison, in 2013, was hailed by the media as the comet of the century. It plunged toward its perihelion with brilliant, dazzling promise, and it never came out. It was annihilated. It dissolved into a cloud of anonymous dust. This was not a mystery. It was a disappointment. But it was a normal outcome. We watched, as we mentioned, Shoemaker Levy 9 get torn into that string of pearls by Jupiter's gravity. A normal, predictable death. We see comets that survive, but are wounded, breaking into smaller pieces, forever diminished. This, then, is the complete baseline. This is our established state of normal. A normal comet is a fragile, icy, primordial remnant of our own solar system. When it meets the sun, it performs a spectacular, predictable show of outgassing and tail formation. Or, it meets a predictable, understandable death by disintegration. It either performs as expected, or it dies as expected. We know the actors, we know their capabilities, and we know the two possible endings. This entire, detailed understanding is the ruler by which we measure all new arrivals. It is the foundation upon which we built our expectations for 3I, Atlas, and it is this very foundation, this very definition of normal, that our interstellar visitor has begun to crack. It is this ruler that the object has, in its strange and silent way, refused to be measured by. Because, as we gathered that precious, fleeting data, as we watched it draw near, before it vanished into the searing glare, we were confronted with a thrilling and deeply unsettling realization. 3I, Atlas, was not following the script. It was not following the script. This realization did not arrive in a single, dramatic flash. It was not a sudden discovery. It was, instead, a slow, dawning, and deeply unsettling creep, a gathering of whispers in the data streams that, when finally pieced together, painted a portrait of an object that simply should not be. In science, we are trained to be masters of pattern recognition. Our entire body of knowledge is built upon it. We see a phenomenon. We categorize it. We access the file our species has built over centuries, and we predict its behavior. We see a star of a certain mass. We know how it will die. We see a galaxy of a certain shape. We know how it is spinning. And when we see a comet, we expect it to behave like a comet. The first assumption, when data contradicts the model, is never that the universe is wrong. The assumption is always that the data is wrong, that our instruments are flawed, that we have made a mistake in our calculations. And so, as the first anomalous readings from 3I, Atlas began to trickle in, they were met with a healthy, predictable, and necessary skepticism. They were dismissed as noise, as instrumental error, as statistical outliers. But the visitor kept coming, and the whispers grew louder, and the data from different telescopes, using different methods, all began to say the same impossible thing. The script, the normal state we just described, was being systematically and confidently ignored. The anomalies were not errors, they were features. The first crack in the foundation of our understanding was not visual, but chemical. It was a riddle written in light. When an object like this is warmed by the sun, the outgassing material in its coma, its atmosphere glows. By capturing this light and splitting it with a prism, a spectrograph, we can read its barcode. This barcode is an unambiguous chemical fingerprint. It tells us, with absolute precision, what the object is made of. When astronomers at the Great Keck Observatory in Hawaii performed this analysis, they were expecting to read the familiar signature of our solar system. They were looking for the holy trinity of ices: water, H2O, carbon monoxide, O, carbon dioxide, O2. They were expecting to see the spectral lines of simple, organic, carbon-rich dust, and they did. But they also saw something else, something that, at first, made no sense at all. The object was screaming with the signature of nickel, the metal. This, in itself, was strange. Comets are snowballs, not cannonballs. They are defined by their ices, not their metals. But perhaps this was just a very dusty, metal-rich comet. The problem was, it was just nickel. In the grand cosmic forge, nickel and iron are inseparable brothers. They are forged together in the dying hearts of supergiant stars. They are born in the same nuclear fire, and they condense together in the debris clouds that form new solar systems. Every meteorite that has ever fallen to Earth, every sample we have from our own asteroids, every spectral reading of a rocky body has told the same story. Where you find nickel, you will find iron. The ratio of one to the other is one of the most stable, most fundamental, most known constants in all of cosmic chemistry. 3. I, Atlas, broke this rule. Its barcode showed a strong, clear signature for nickel, but the signature for iron, its inseparable twin, Pros, was conspicuously, hauntingly absent. This is not just strange. This is not just anomalous. To an astrophysicist, this is wrong. It is like finding a perfectly formed human skeleton, but with bones made of silicon instead of calcium. It is like finding a shadow cast by an object that is not there. It shattered the normal script of chemical composition. This was not a dirty snowball made from the common clay of our own solar system. This was something else. Something built from a set of chemical blueprints we had never seen before. And then, as if this chemical riddle were not enough, came the physical one, the visual one, the one that seemed to defy logic itself. As 3I, Atlas drew closer, our more powerful telescopes, like Hubble, began to resolve its shape, or rather, the shape of the material leaving it. As we established, the normal script is absolute on this point. The sun pushes. Its wind and its light push the gas and dust away. A comet's tail, like a windsock, always points away from the Sunday. This is a law. 3I, Atlas, we observed, had a tail, a glorious, long tail, pointing dutifully away from the sun, just as the script demanded. But it also had something else, a tendril, a jet, a distinct, narrow, and persistent feature that was pointing towards the Sunday. This observation was, again, met with initial dismissal. Astronomers are familiar with a phenomenon called an anti-tail. It is not a real thing, but a beautiful, geometric illusion. When the Earth happens to pass through the orbital plane of a comet, our line of sight perspective can make it appear as if the heavy dust, which lags behind the comet in its own orbit, is pointing backwards towards the Sunday. It is a trick of geometry. So, the astronomers checked. They ran the models, they calculated the orbits, and the answer came back, cold and clear. This was not a line of sight illusion. The geometry was wrong. What they were seeing was real. It was a physical jet of material, a stream of gas and dust, being ejected from the nucleus with such force that it was, at least momentarily, overpowering the combined pressure of the solar wind and the sunlight itself. It was a flag flying directly into the wind. It was a river flowing, impossibly, uphill. What could cause this? A bizarre, chaotic, end-over-end tumbling. A pocket of exotic, hyper-volatile ice exploding with unimaginable force. Or something else? This was the second crack. The object was not just made of strange material, it was behaving with strange physics. And finally, there was the third anomaly, the one that tied the other two together. It was the question of its integrity. The normal script says comets are icy rubble piles. They are weak. They are fragile. The only reason they have tails is because they are literally falling apart under the sun's gentle warmth. But 3I, Atlas was facing a paradox. To produce that bizarre, sunward-pointing jet, to overpower the Sunday, it would require an immense, focused, violent explosion of outgassing. And such a violent explosion on a fragile rubble pile would have acted like a stick of dynamite. It would have torn the object to shreds. It would have disintegrated. But 3I, Atlas, did not. It held together. Month after month, it endured these violent internal eruptions. It was strong. It was coherent. It was solid. It was not behaving like a fluffy, loosely packed snowball. It was behaving like a single, dense, resilient object. So, this was the picture we had. Right before our visitor vanished behind the blinding curtain of the Sunday, we were not looking at a dirty snowball. It was too strong. We were not looking at a normal comet. Its chemistry was alien. And we were not watching it obey the normal laws of physics. It had a jet pointing the wrong way. The normal script, the one built from studying our own family for thousands of years, was not just flawed, it was useless. We had to throw the entire script away. We are not, it turns out, watching a familiar play. We are watching the prologue to something entirely new, and the main character has just walked off stage into the fire. And this is why the 72-hour countdown is so agonizing. This is why the silence from behind the sun is so profound. We are not simply waiting to see if a fragile snowball will survive. We are waiting to see what a strong, chemically alien, physically defiant object will do when it meets the most extreme test our solar system can offer. A normal comet gives us two predictable outcomes. It performs or it dies. This anomaly, this interstellar riddle, offers a third, unknown, and perhaps unimaginable possibility. And the answer is being written, right now, in the one place we cannot look. And so, we were left with a broken script. We were left with a visitor that refused to be categorized, an object that was not, in any simple or familiar way, a comet. And in the face of this profound anomaly, we did the only thing our species has ever learned to do when confronted with the incomprehensible. We looked. Harder. We stared into the heart of its faint, fuzzy glow, and we began the delicate, almost sacred process of dissection. Not a dissection of flesh and bone, but of light. Light, after all, is the great storyteller of the cosmos. It is the ultimate, incorruptible messenger. It travels for eons across the void, carrying in its very wavelength, in its color, in its flavor, the unchangeable truth of its origin. It is a letter from the past, and the science of spectroscopy is the art of reading that letter. It is the decoder ring for the universe. The method is one of almost childish, beautiful simplicity, scaled up to the divine. You take the faint, precious light from your object, you pass it through a prism, a spectrograph, and you spread that light out into its constituent colors. A rainbow. But it is not a perfect, continuous rainbow, like the one you see after a storm. It is a rainbow, interrupted. It is a barcode. It is a spectrum, crossed by a series of sharp, dark, and sometimes bright lines. Each line is a chemical fingerprint. A dark line means a specific element, a specific atom, has absorbed that precise color of light. A bright line means an element is so energized, it is glowing with that precise color. Each element, hydrogen, helium, carbon, iron, nickel, has its own unique, unchangeable barcode. It is as distinctive, as absolute, and as reliable as a human fingerprint. This is not a theory. It is a physical, fundamental truth. And so, we turn this art upon 3I, Atlas, our great mechanical eyes, the twin 10-meter mirrors of the Keck Observatory, perched high above the clouds on the sacred, dark summit of Mauna Kea in Hawaii, locked onto this faint, interstellar smudge. They gathered its ancient light, photon by precious photon, and fed it into the cold, precise heart of their spectrographs. They began to read the letter. The first lines of the barcode were, in their own way, comforting. We saw the faint, familiar signatures of carbon. We saw the expected glow of cyanogen. This is comet stuff. This is the normal script. It was a dusty, icy object, just as we thought. But then, the data began to emerge from the noise, and the comforting familiarity vanished. It was replaced by a profound and growing sense of wrongness. The spectrum was dominated by signatures that should not have been there, at least not like this. The object was glowing with the bright, sharp, unmistakable emission lines of metal. Not just any metal. It was a very specific and very strange barcode. The fingerprint of nickel. A strong, vibrant, almost shouting signature of gaseous nickel. This, in itself, was a profound riddle. Comets, our dirty snowballs, are defined by their ices. Their beauty comes from the sublimation of water, of carbon dioxide, of methane. They are not defined by their metals. Metals are heavy. They are refractory. They do not glow in a comet's coma unless the comet is either extraordinarily hot or has a composition unlike anything we have ever seen. This was not a dirty snowball. This was, perhaps, a metallic snowball, a cannonball, as some scientists began to wonder, a fragment from the metallic core of a shattered, alien planetoid. This was already a revolutionary idea, a piece of the iron-nickel core of another world delivered to our doorstep. It would be one of the most significant discoveries in astronomical history. But this is where the mystery truly begins. This is where the riddle transitions from revolutionary to impossible. The astronomers, their curiosity now at a fever pitch, looked closer at the barcode. They looked for nickel's inseparable partner, its twin. They looked for iron, and it was not there. This is a sentence that, to an astrophysicist, simply does not compute. It is a logical contradiction. It is like saying you found a word with only consonants. It is like saying you found a shadow without an object. It is like saying you found a positive magnetic pole with no corresponding negative. It is wrong. Let us explain, with the reverence this mystery deserves, why it is wrong. In the universe, in the grand cosmic forge, iron and nickel are not just friends. They are not just neighbors. They are brothers. They are born in the exact same moment, in the exact same place, from the exact same process. That place is the heart of a dying supergiant star. In the final, desperate minutes of its life, a massive star begins a frantic, runaway series of nuclear reactions. It is the ultimate alchemy. It fuses lighter elements into heavier ones, in layers, like a cosmic onion. It fuses hydrogen to helium, helium to carbon, carbon to oxygen, and on, until, in its very core, it forges silicon into iron and nickel. This is the end of the line. The process stops here. The star can get no more energy. It collapses. And then, in an explosion of unimaginable violence, a Type II supernova, it dies. And in that death, it scatters its newly forged children across the galaxy. It seeds the interstellar void with all the heavy elements of life, including, and always, iron and nickel. They are blasted out together. They mix into the great clouds of gas and dust together. And when those clouds, billions of years later, collapse to form new stars and new solar systems, like ours, or the 13I, Atlas came from, they condense together. They have very similar chemical properties. They have very similar condensation temperatures. As the primordial disk cools, the gaseous iron and the gaseous nickel freeze into solid metallic dust grains at the same time, in the same place. They are, from birth to condensation, chemically and physically inseparable. And we know this is true. We have the proof, right here on Earth. Every single metallic meteorite that has ever, in the history of our planet, survived its own trial by fire and landed on our surface. Every single one is made of an alloy of iron and nickel. Our own planet, the Earth, has a core made of molten iron and nickel. The Sun's atmosphere, our asteroids, all of them show this fixed, constant and universal cosmic ratio. You cannot have one without the other. And yet, 3I, Atlas, our visitor, our guest, Its barcode was screaming with nickel and was deafeningly silent with iron. It was not just a low ratio of iron. It was no iron. A void where a mountain should be. This is an impossibility. It shatters not just the script of comets, it shatters the script of cosmic chemistry itself. It means one of two things. Either 3I, Atlas, was born in a place in the galaxy so bizarre, so alien, that the fundamental laws of stellar nucleosynthesis and chemical condensation are different there. A place where, somehow, nickel is created or condensed in isolation. This would be a discovery that rewrites physics. Or the second option, the one that is, in its own way, even more profound. It means that the nickel and iron were born together. They did condense together. And then something separated them. Something, or some process, meticulously and with incredible efficiency, removed the iron, leaving only the pure, refined nickel. What kind of natural process could possibly do this? What physical mechanism can filter a cloud of metallic dust, atom by atom? This is where the riddle deepens, and the data, as if sensing our confusion, offered one final chilling clue. The signature was not just nickel. Later analysis, as the object brightened, suggested a very specific and very strange compound of nickel. It was consistent with a gas called nickel tetracarbonyl. This is not a gas that forms naturally in space. It is a volatile, complex, and notoriously toxic compound. On Earth, we are very familiar with it. It is the central, critical component of the MOND process, an industrial, chemical engineering process used in the late 19th and 20th centuries for one specific purpose: to refine nickel, to purify it, to separate it from all its impurities, including iron. This was the data, a chemical signature, an industrial solvent, coming from a billion-year-old traveler between the stars. The implications of this were staggering. It was, perhaps, the most unsettling, the most impossible data point in the history of astronomy. And this chemical impossibility, this riddle of the missing iron and the industrial gas, was only the first piece of evidence that our visitor was not following the script. It was the what, but there was still the how. It was not just what the object was made of, it was what the object was doing. This chemical riddle was, in itself, a revolution. But it was a riddle written in an abstract numerical language, a barcode of light, a mystery for the specialists in their laboratories of data. It was the what, but the how. The how was the second piece of the puzzle, and in many ways, it was the more visceral, the more immediately wrong. This was not an abstract signature. This was a picture. It was a physical shape. It was a challenge not to our complex models of stellar nucleosynthesis, but to our most fundamental, intuitive, grade school understanding of physics. A challenge to the simple, cosmic law of push and pull. And to see this, we turned from the spectrograph, the prism that deciphers, to the lens that reveals. We turned, as humanity always does when it needs to see the impossible, to the silent, orbiting eye of the Hubble Space Telescope. Floating in the cold, black vacuum high above the shimmer of our atmosphere, Hubble sees with a clarity that is almost supernatural. It sees form, and we asked it to show us the form of this visitor. Before it could show us the anomaly, however, it first showed us the normal, and it was beautiful. In the images returned by Hubble and by other great ground-based observatories, we saw a sight of profound, familiar majesty. We saw a comet, just as the script demanded. There it was, a bright condensed nucleus, a star-like point of light, the body of the visitor. And streaming away from it, for millions of kilometers, was a glorious, diffuse, and gently curved dust tail. Its soft, yellowish-white light was the simple, reflected glow of our sun, scattered by the trillions of tiny, solid grains of grit and rock that had been liberated from the nucleus. This tail, as we expected, was lagging behind the object in its orbit, a perfect, graceful arc, the dusty wake of a ship sailing through the solar system. And there, fainter, but just as correct, was the ion tail, a narrow, ethereal, bluish streamer pushed by the solar wind, pointing, always, directly away from the Sunday. A perfect cosmic windsock. It was all there. It was a portrait of a comet. It was, for a moment, a profound relief. Perhaps the chemical data was a fluke. Perhaps it was just a strange, but ultimately conventional, comet. It was normal, except for one thing, a feature, a detail that, at first, seemed like an error in the image, a processing artifact, a cosmic ray strike. But it was not. It was there, in every image, from every observatory. A thin, bright, cohesive tendril of material, a jet, and this jet, this filament of light, was pointing. Wrong. It was not pointing away from the sun with the other two tails. It was, in seeming, blatant, and physical defiance, pointing towards the Sunday. Now, in science, the most extraordinary claim is always met with the most ordinary explanation, and in astronomy, a sunward-pointing tail is a known and beautifully understood illusion. It has a name. It is called an anti-tail. It is not in any way a real tail. It is a trick of geometry, a simple, elegant, celestial parlor trick. It works like this. The dust tail, as we said, is made of heavy grains of dust. They are pushed by sunlight, but they are heavy, so they are pushed slowly. They lag behind the comet's nucleus, spreading out along its orbital path, like a wide, flat wake left by a boat on a lake. For most of our viewing angles, we see this wake from the side, and it looks like a beautiful curved tail. But, on very rare occasions, the Earth in its own faster orbit will pass directly through the orbital plane of that comet. We move from a side view to an edge-on view, and when we look at the comet from that precise edge-on angle, we are seeing that wide, flat wake as a single line. We see the part of the wake streaming out behind the nucleus, and we also see the older, laggard dust in front of the nucleus along the track it is about to travel. And from this specific, illusory perspective, that older dust appears to be a spike, a tail, pointing back towards the Sunday. It is an illusion, a beautiful but well understood trick of perspective. And so, this was the immediate, rational and logical explanation for what Hubble was seeing. "Ah," said the world's astronomers, "what a stunning example of a geometric anti-tail, a perfect textbook case." It was normal. They had found the normal script again. The riddle was solved. So they ran the models. They are, after all, scientists. They must check their work. They took the known orbit of 3i, Atlas. They took the known orbit of the Earth. They plotted, with exquisite, millimeter precision, our exact geometric line-of-sight viewing angle relative to the visitor's orbital plane. And the answer came back cold and clear and absolute. The geometry was wrong. We were not in its orbital plane. We were not even close to its orbital plane. The beautiful, rational, and comforting explanation was incorrect. The parlor trick was not being performed, which meant that what Hubble was seeing was not an illusion. It was real. It was a physical stream of gas and dust. A jet, a tendril, being ejected from the nucleus. And it was, in fact, flying against the combined, overwhelming force of the solar wind and the radiation pressure of the Sunday. This is an impossibility. It is not just strange. It is not just anomalous. It is, by our understanding of celestial mechanics, a physical contradiction. It is a flag flying into the wind. It is a fountain spraying water downwards into the ground. It is the wake of a boat forming in front of the boat. It is a deep, fundamental, and visual wrongness. A river flowing uphill. The solar wind alone is a hurricane of charged particles moving at over 1,000,000 kilometers per hour. The push of sunlight, the radiation pressure, is gentle, but it is relentless. And for a tiny grain of dust, or a single atom of gas, these forces are absolute. They define direction. They are the downhill of the solar system. And this object, this visitor, was spitting uphill. So, what could cause this? What could possibly be happening? The scientific mind, again, scrambles for a rational purchase. Perhaps the object is not flying smoothly. Perhaps it is tumbling chaotically, end over end, and perhaps it has a fissure, a pocket of hypervolatile ice. And as it tumbles, this fissure, acting like a rocket nozzle, is randomly firing off jets in all directions. And it just so happened, by sheer, dumb luck, that every time we looked, every time Hubble took a picture, that jet was, by coincidence, pointing sunward. This is plausible, but the feature was persistent. We saw it not for an hour or a day, we saw it for weeks. A chaotic tumble, by its very definition, is chaotic. It would not keep a jet locked persistently in the one single direction that is the most physically difficult to maintain. The odds are astronomical. So, we are left with the only other possibility. The jet is not flying into the wind. It is overpowering it. It is being ejected, exploding, from the nucleus with such a colossal, focused, and violent velocity that it is temporarily creating its own private uphill. It is an explosion, a continuous, directional, rocket-like blast, strong enough to punch through the million-kilometer-per-hour hurricane of the solar wind. This, in itself, is a staggering concept. It implies forces and energies originating from within this object that are almost geological, a form of alien cryovolcanism erupting with a power we have never witnessed. But this very explanation, this only rational, physical explanation, opens the door to the third and final impossibility. It presents us with a nested paradox, because, as we established, the normal script for our comets, is that they are fragile, icy rubble piles. They are weak. They are held together by little more than frost and hope. An explosion, a continuous, focused, directional blast, an eruption of the very kind we are forced to propose, would be a death sentence. An explosion that violent on an object that fragile is not a jet. It is a detonation. It would act like a stick of dynamite. It would have, instantly and catastrophically, torn a dirty snowball to absolute shreds. It would have annihilated it. And yet, here was the third anomaly, the one that bound the other two together. 3I, Atlas, was not annihilated. It held. It endured. It persisted. It contained this impossible, sun-defying, internal violence, and it stayed in one piece. This was the picture, right before the curtain of fire fell, a chemical impossibility, wrapped in a physical impossibility, sustaining a behavioral impossibility. We were not looking at a dirty snowball that was strong. We were looking at something that was behaving like a solid-state engine made of impossible materials. And this final, crucial data point, its sheer, stubborn, structural integrity, was the most profound and most frightening riddle of all. So, this was the dossier. This was the file, the problem set, that 3I, Atlas, handed to the human race before it slipped behind the Sunday. Let us, for a moment, step back from the poetry and hold these facts in our hands, just as a scientist must. Let us feel their impossible weight, their paradoxical, contradictory shapes. We are left with a set of puzzle pieces that cannot fit together. It is as if we have been given pieces from three different, mutually exclusive puzzles, and yet we are told they form a single, cohesive image. First, there is the impossible material, a chemical signature that screams with refined gaseous nickel, but is deafeningly silent in a way that nature should not allow, with iron, a signature, furthermore, that hauntingly suggests the presence of an exotic, volatile compound, nickel tetracarbonyl, a gas that, on our world, is not a product of geology, but of industry. This is puzzle piece 1. It is a piece that does not belong in a dirty snowball. It barely belongs in our solar system at all. Second, there is the impossible action, a physical, observed defiance of the known laws of our solar system, a flag flying directly into the solar wind, a river flowing uphill, a persistent, powerful jet of material exploding towards the sun in a flagrant challenge to the combined, overwhelming pressure of solar wind and solar light. This is puzzle piece 2. It is a piece that does not belong in any model of celestial mechanics we have ever built. And third, there is the impossible resilience. This is the piece that locks the paradox. This is the most maddening piece of all. The object is, clearly, volatile. It is exploding. It is outgassing with such violence that it can create that impossible sunward jet. This implies it is a snowball, a fragile, eruptive, dynamic thing. But it is also, at the same time, indestructible. It is strong. It is a solid-state object, a cannonball with the structural integrity to contain these same catastrophic internal explosions. Explosions that would, by any known measure, have instantly and utterly annihilated a fragile snowball. It is, in short, a fragile, indestructible, exploding, solid state. Is object. It is a logical contradiction, a physical koan. This is the evidence. This is the data we were left with. It is not, as you can see, a clean, neat, linear story. It is a mess, a beautiful, terrifying, and profound mess. It is in this moment that we must invoke the spirit, if not the literal words, of the scientific community. As one senior astronomer, struggling to explain the data to a journalist, was heard to say, "When we first saw this, all of it, we didn't think we had discovered an object. We thought our observatory was broken. Seriously. We thought the equipment had failed. We thought the sensors were flawed. We thought the software had a bug, because the data is nonsense. This is the most crucial, human part of the scientific method. The first, second, and third assumption, when you see the impossible, is not that you have discovered the impossible. The assumption is that you have failed, that you have made a mistake, that the human, fallible, mechanical system has broken. And so, they checked, they rechecked, they calibrated, they ran diagnostics. They asked, begged other observatories to look. Please, they said, look at this object and tell us we are wrong. And Hubble looked and confirmed Keck. And the Gemini telescope looked and confirmed Hubble. And the infrared arrays looked and confirmed the visual. The data was not noise. The equipment was not broken. The math was correct. The object was real. The universe, it seemed, had simply presented us with a thing that should not be. And yet, it was. It was real. It was, at that moment, approaching at 200,000 kilometers per hour. And it was, in its silent, defiant, impossible way, laughing at our textbooks. This is the object. This impossible, contradictory thing that, right now, as you listen, is plunging into the 72-hour crucible. This is why the silence from behind the sun is so agonizing. This is why the wait is not just a matter of what happens next. We are not waiting to see if a simple, fragile comet will survive. We already know the answer to that. A normal comet, behaving in this way, would have died months ago. It would never, ever have made it this far. No, we are waiting to see what this anomaly, this paradox, made of impossible materials, demonstrating impossible physics, and held together by impossible strength, will do, when it is subjected to the single, most violent, most extreme test of fire and gravity that our solar system can possibly offer. When your script has failed, when your normal has been shattered, when your data is a pile of contradictions, you are forced, as a scientist and as a species, to do something new. You are forced to abandon the solid, comfortable ground of what is, and begin to build on the shaky, uncertain, and thrilling terrain of what if. You are forced to construct a new ladder, a ladder of pure hypothesis, a ladder that must, by sheer logical necessity, begin its climb in the high, thin atmosphere of the extraordinary. And that is where we must now go. We have the what. We must now, finally, dare to ask why. We are left, then, in an intellectual, void. The pieces are on the table. A chemical signature that should not exist. A physical action that cannot happen. A structural resilience that defies the other two. The script, the comfortable, centuries-old state of normal, is not just torn, it is useless. It is a navigation chart for an ocean that, we have just discovered, does not exist. It is a dictionary for a language that our interstellar visitor, 3i, Atlas, simply does not speak. So, what do we do? Now, when the bedrock of your knowledge, the very foundation of your understanding, has been shattered by a single, anomalous, silent object. What is the next step? Do we give up? Do we label 3i, Atlas, as a paradox, a glitch, an unknown, and simply file it away, unresolved, in a cabinet of cosmic curiosities? Do we declare the universe broken and go home? No, that is not the human way. And it is, most certainly, not the scientific way. When the map fails, you do not curse the landscape. You begin, with a profound and necessary humility, to draw a new one. This is the most beautiful, the most creative, and the most terrifying moment in all of science. It is the moment where the cold, hard, methodical engine of data gathering must give way to something else. It is the moment where logic, stretched to its breaking point, must call for aid. It must call upon its twin, a disciplined, rigorous, and profound imagination. This is the birth of hypothesis. We are forced, by the sheer, stubborn, contradictory facts, to abandon the solid ground of what we know, and to begin, very carefully, to build a new structure of what if. We must, in our minds, construct a new reality, a new model of the universe, that allows for an object like 3i, Atlas, to exist. But this is not fantasy. This is not storytelling in the way of myth. The imagination of a scientist is not free. It is tethered. It is bound by chains of iron logic. It is bound by the evidence. Whatever new map we draw, whatever new story we tell, it is required, to explain all of the impossible pieces. It cannot be selective. It cannot conveniently ignore the missing iron. It cannot dismiss the sunward-pointing jet. It cannot pretend the object is just fragile or just strong. It must, in one single, elegant, cohesive explanation, account for all of it. It must explain the impossible material, and the impossible action, and the impossible resilience, all at once. This is the rule of the game. And so, we do not leap wildly into the dark. We climb. We build. We construct a ladder, a hypothesis ladder. This is the tool we build when the ground beneath us has fallen away. It is a structure of pure logic, of if, then, that allows us to ascend, rung by rung, from the chaos of the unknown towards the light of understanding. And this is the ladder that we, you and I, in this quiet, contemplative moment, must now begin to climb. The rules of this climb are simple, but they are sacred. And they are the very soul of the scientific method. We must begin on the lowest, most stable, and most secure rung. We must begin with the hypothesis that is, while still strange, the least strange. The one that requires us to invent the least new physics, the one that bends our normal rules, but does not, entirely, break them. This is the great principle of Occam's razor, the simplest explanation, the one with the fewest new assumptions, that fits all the facts, is the one we must consider first. We will place our foot on this first most rational rung. We will test it. We will put our full intellectual weight upon it. We will ask, with rigorous honesty, does this, truly, explain all three paradoxes? Does it account for the nickel, and the jet, and the strength? If the answer is yes, then our climb may be over. We may have found our new, expanded, and more wondrous normal. But if the answer is no, if this simplest explanation fails, if it creaks under the weight of one of the contradictions, if it leaves even one of those impossible puzzle pieces still, maddeningly, on the table, then we are forced, by the demands of logic, to do something deeply unsettling. We are forced to climb higher. We are forced to step up to the next rung, a rung that is, by definition, more speculative, more unsettling, more extraordinary, a rung that asks us to believe in things that are stranger still. We will test this second rung, and if it fails, we will climb again. We will climb from the merely strange to the profoundly anomalous, to only if we are forced, only if every other, more mundane, more natural explanation has been tried and has been broken by the evidence. Only then are we permitted, by the laws of science, to place our hand on the final, highest, and most terrifying rung, the rung of the truly Phi-Thung, the extraordinary. This, then, is our task. This is the analysis that is happening right now in the minds and on the computer models of every astronomer who has looked at this case. The ladder, as it has been constructed by the scientific community, seems to have three primary, competing, and profoundly dramatic rungs, three families of explanation, three distinct, possible new realities that we may, in fact, inhabit. Each one is a world unto itself. Each one is a story, and each one carries a different and absolutely critical implication for what exactly is happening now in these 72 hours. The crucible of the perihelion, that trial by fire, is not just a test of the object, it is a test of this ladder, the answer, the verdict that we will receive in late November will be the universe's way of telling us which of these rungs, if any, held the truth. What we see, whether it is a single, intact, victorious object, or a shattered, glittering string of pearls, or a cold, silent, empty patch of sky where a ghost once was, will not just be an outcome. It will be an answer. It will be the grand, empirical revelation. So, let us take a breath. Let us quiet our minds. Let us prepare for this ascent. This is not a race. It is not a tabloid competition for the wildest theory. This is a contemplation, a slow, honest, and methodical climb into the heart of the greatest, most immediate, and most physical mystery of our time. We have our paradoxes. We have our rules. We have our ladder. Let us, together, take the first, careful, and most logical step. Let us, then, begin this climb. Let us, with all the intellectual honesty we can muster, place our foot upon the first and lowest and most sensible rung of this ladder. This is the rung of known unknowns. This is the hypothesis of minimal invention. It is the most conservative, the most rational, the most scientific of all the possibilities. This first hypothesis, this first Kitschban, we shall call it the resilient wanderer, or perhaps a stranger from a strange land. This hypothesis begins with a simple and profoundly humble declaration. Our normal is not the only normal. It posits that our solar system, with its fragile, dirty snowball comets, is not the universal template. It suggests that 3I, Atlas, is, simply, a different kind of comet. A comet born in a different kind of star system, one with a different chemistry, a different history, and a different architecture. It suggests that all three of our paradoxes are not paradoxes at all. They are, quite simply, features. Features of a Class II comet, a visitor from a place that builds its wanderers stronger. Let us test this. Let us take this elegant, simple and comfortable idea and hold it firmly against our three stubborn, impossible facts. Does this rung hold our weight? First, the impossible resilience. How does this hypothesis explain the object's sheer, paradoxical strength? How can it be both volatile and indestructible? The resilient wanderer hypothesis answers this with beautiful simplicity. It says, you are making a false assumption. You are assuming the ice is the glue. In our comets, the dirty snowballs, this is true. They are loose piles of rubble, and the frozen gas is the only thing holding them together. When the glue sublimates, the object disintegrates. But what if 3i, Atlas, is not a snowball with some dirt in it? What if it is a rock, a dense, solid rock and metal boulder with some ice in it? What if it is not a snowball, but a piece of granite? Both are rocks, in a sense, but one is chalk and the other is a mountain. What if 3i, Atlas, was formed not in the cold, fluffy outer fringes of its home system like our Oort cloud, but was formed closer in a denser, warmer, more violent region where material was compressed, heated, and sintered, baked into a single, cohesive, solid object? In this model, the object is not a rubble pile. It is a monolith, a solid, strong, resilient piece of its alien homeland. The ices, the volatiles, are not the glue. They are inclusions. They are pockets of gas, trapped inside this solid matrix, like bubbles in a piece of volcanic glass. This single, elegant change to the blueprint instantly solves the paradox of strength. It explains both sides. It is volatile because it has ice, trapped under immense pressure, and it is strong because its fundamental structure is not ice, it is rock. This brings us to the second paradox, the impossible action, the sunward-pointing jet. If our object is, in fact, a solid, pressurized monolith, then the jet is not just explained, it is inevitable. Think of it. It is not a gentle fluffing off of surface frost. It is a geyser. It is a cryovolcano. As the sun heats this solid, rocky body, the heat penetrates slowly until it reaches one of these deep, trapped, pressurized pockets of frozen gas. The ice flashes to vapor in a confined space. The pressure builds and builds and builds until it becomes uncontainable. It finds a micro fissure, a weak point in the rock, and it detonates. It erupts, explodes, outward in a single, focused, collimated jet. A jet of unimaginable, directional, high-velocity violence. This is the source of the sunward-pointing feature. A blast so powerful, so focused, that its initial velocity, its muzzle velocity, is, in fact, great enough to overpower the solar wind, punching uphill for a short distance before the particles are, inevitably, bent back. What we were seeing, in Hubble's images, was the base of that eruption, the muzzle flash, of a continuous, geological explosion. And, because the object is a solid monolith, it survives this explosion. It contains it. The jet is not a detonation of the object, it is an eruption from the object. In this hypothesis, anomalies 2 and 3 are not a paradox at all. They are a symptom. They are cause and effect. The strength allows the violent jet. The two impossible facts are, in fact, a single, unified, and perfectly logical process. This is beautiful. This is elegant. This first rung of the ladder feels strong. It has taken two of our greatest paradoxes, and, with one simple, plausible assumption, it has solved them. It has turned them from a contradiction into a confirmation. But we are not finished. This rung must hold all our weight, and we have, as yet, ignored the third, and perhaps the most profound, riddle, the impossible material, the nickel, the missing iron. Does this elegant, resilient wanderer model, this solid, rocky monolith, explain the chemistry? And here, on this third crucial, non-negotiable point of contact. This first, beautiful rung creaks. It groans. It begins to fail. Because how? How does "it's a strong rock" explain "it's a rock made of pure, refined nickel"? It doesn't. The hypothesis has no native answer for this. It is a model of physics. It has no explanation for the chemistry. To save this hypothesis, to save this first rung, we are forced to add something. We are forced to invent a second, massive, and entirely unsupported assumption. We are forced to say, oh, well, it is a strong, rocky monolith that also, by sheer, random coincidence, just happens to have been born in a star system that is unlike any we have ever imagined. A system where, somehow, the laws of stellar nucleosynthesis are different. A system where stars explode in a way that creates only nickel. A system where planets condense in a way that separates iron from nickel. This is a colossal leap. It is, scientifically, an act of desperation. It is asking to invent an entirely new, unseen, and physically baffling branch of astrochemistry, just to save our simple model of physics. And what of the nickel tetracarbonyl, the industrial gas? Here, the hypothesis is forced to scramble. It is not industrial gas. It must cry. It is. It must be. A mistake. A misreading. It is some other natural, exotic, interstellar molecule that we have never seen before. And it just happens to have the exact, identical, perfect spectral barcode as a 20th century industrial refining agent. It is a coincidence. An astronomical coincidence. This is weak. This is profoundly weak. The first rung of our ladder, which felt so strong, so elegant, which solved the how and the why of the object's behavior, has utterly failed to explain the what. It has failed to explain the object itself. It has explained the action, but not the actor. And so, our first hypothesis, the resilient wanderer, is incomplete. It is broken. It does not, in fact, hold our weight. It leaves the deepest, strangest, and most impossible piece of the puzzle, the chemical signature, lying, untouched, on the table. And this is the test. This is the moment of truth for the scientific mind. The temptation is to stay on this rung, to cling to it. It is so comfortable. It is 90% natural. It is so close. We could just ignore the nickel. We could hope it was an error. We could pretend it's a coincidence. But this is not permitted. The rules of the ladder are absolute. All the evidence, or none. And the evidence is clear. This hypothesis has failed. It is insufficient. And so, with a reluctance, with a growing sense of intellectual vertigo, but driven by the relentless, honest, and necessary engine of logic, we must lift our foot. We must abandon the comfortable, sunlit, natural explanation that almost worked. We must climb. We must step up to the second rung, a rung that is, by definition, higher, more unstable, and stranger, a rung that must, in order to solve the chemical riddle that the first rung could not, take us into a realm of truly exotic and violent cosmic physics. We must step higher. We have to climb. The first rung, the resilient wanderer, the comfortable, natural explanation, it broke. It broke under the weight of the chemistry. It could explain the physics of the object, but not the object itself. It left the most profound, most stubborn, and most impossible piece of the puzzle, the riddle of the pure, refined nickel, free of its brother, iron, completely and utterly unsolved. And the rules of the ladder are absolute. All of the evidence, or none. And so, with a deep, intellectual breath and a sense of growing vertigo, we lift our gaze and our foot. We must step up, we must ascend to the second rung. This is the hypothesis we shall call the Star Eater's Shard. If the first rung was an attempt to explain the object by changing the physics of a comet, this second rung is an attempt to explain it by inventing a new and profoundly violent origin. It is a hypothesis of truly exotic, but still natural, astrophysics. It looks at the nickel-iron paradox, at that impossible, industrial, chemical signature, and it says, "You are right, this is not a comet, and it is not a rock. It is shrapnel. It is the debris from a cataclysm so vast, so violent, and so hellish that it is the only natural process we can imagine that can act as a cosmic refinery. It is the only natural process that can separate the inseparable." This hypothesis asks us to journey, in our minds, to a place that makes our sun's crucible look like a gentle flickering candle. It asks us to journey to a black hole, not a hypothetical one, a real one, perhaps the one at the center of 3I, Atlas's own native galaxy, or perhaps the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A*, 4 million times the mass of our Sunday. Now, imagine a star system, much like our own, in that distant, unknown galaxy. It, too, has rocky, metallic core planets, just as we do, and, through the long, slow, gravitational waltz of eons, this entire star system, this other family, it falls into the gravitational abyss of its central black hole. The star, the planets, all of it, is captured, and it is here that the process, the refining, begins. A planet, a body perhaps like Earth or like Mercury, a dense, differentiated world with a heavy metallic core of iron and nickel, and a lighter, rocky silicon mantle, is pulled, inexorably, towards the event horizon. It is a tidal disruption event. It is the same tidal force that 3I, Atlas, is facing now, but it is not magnified by thousands. It is magnified by billions. The black hole's gravity is so intense that the pull on the front of the planet is infinitely stronger than the pull on the back. It does not just stretch the planet. It spaghettifies it. It unravels it. And in this unraveling, it separates it. The lighter, rocky, silicon mantle, the crust, is ripped away first. It is shredded into a vast cloud of dust and gas, forming a glowing, superheated accretion disk around the black hole, a halo of superheated plasma that shines brighter than a billion stars. But the core, the dense, heavy, tightly bound metallic core, it resists. For a moment, it plunges deeper, a solid cannonball of iron and nickel, naked to the void. But nothing survives that close. The core, too, is finally torn apart by the impossible tides. It, too, is shredded into a stream of molten, and then gaseous, and then plasma, metal, a river of pure iron and nickel, flowing into the mouth of the black hole. And it is here, in this final, desperate, million-degree inferno, in the magnetized, swirling, relativistic chaos of the inner accretion disk, that the magic, the refining, happens. Iron is ferromagnetic. It is immensely responsive to magnetic fields. Nickel is also magnetic, but it is less so. Its properties are different. This hypothesis, this Star Eater's shard model, posits that in the insane, unimaginable magnetic fields of a black hole's accretion disk, a cosmic scale mass spectrometer, this difference matters. The magnetic fields, catch the plasma stream of iron. They trap it. They guide it inexorably along the magnetic field lines, down, 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 into the event horizon. The iron is consumed. It is eaten by the black hole. It is removed from the universe. But the nickel, the less magnetic nickel, it is not so easily trapped. Some of it, yes, falls in, but a fraction of it, a significant fraction, is caught in a different process. It is threaded onto the other magnetic field lines, the ones that do not spiral in, but that twist up and out. It is funneled by the black hole's spin into a relativistic jet, a bipolar astrophysical jet, an exhaust port for the star eater that blasts out of the accretion disk, out of the galactic center, out into the deep, cold, interstellar void at nearly the speed of light, a jet of pure, refined nickel. And in that cold void, this stream of superheated, gaseous, elemental nickel cools. It condenses. It freezes, atom by atom, into grains, then pebbles, then boulders. It coalesces over millions of years into shards, solid, monolithic cannonballs of pure interstellar metal. A Star Eater's shard. This is the hypothesis of rung 2. It is breathtaking. It is terrifying. It is epic. It uses nothing but known, if extreme, physics, gravity, magnetism, and tidal forces. And let us test it. Let us hold it, this new, violent, and wondrous story, against our 3 paradoxes. First, the impossible material. The nickel-iron paradox. Does this rung hold our weight? Yes. It sings. It is not a problem for this hypothesis. It is the central prediction. It is a model built to explain this, and it does so with horrifying, beautiful, naturalistic elegance. It is a cosmic refinery. It is the one known natural process that could, plausibly, separate iron from nickel. Rung 2 has solved, with a single, devastatingly powerful idea, the very riddle that broke rung 1. This is a triumph. But the rules are absolute. All of the evidence. We must continue the test. What about our other 2 paradoxes? What about the comet? What about the impossible action, the sunward jet, and the impossible resilience, the fragile strong contradiction? And here, in this moment of highest, purest intellectual triumph, in the very second that we have solved the impossible chemistry, this second rung also breaks. It shatters. It shatters even more completely and even more catastrophically than the first one. Because what have we just described? We have described a time-solid, cold, monolithic chunk of metal, a cannonball, a piece of pure, elemental, interstellar nickel. This object, this Star Eater's shard, it is the most inert, the most stable, the most non-volatile object we can possibly imagine. It has no ice. It has no gas. It has no volatiles trapped inside it. It is just metal. So, when this object, this TDE fragment, approaches the Sunday, what does it do? The answer is nothing. It does nothing. It does not outgas. It does not sublimate. It does not erupt. It does not form a coma. It does not grow a tail. It certainly does not have the fuel to produce a violent, continuous, sunward-punching jet. It cannot. It has no engine. It has no propellant. It is dead. This hypothesis, rung 2, in its brilliant, singular focus on solving the chemistry, has completely and totally failed to explain the physics. It has failed to explain the behavior. It has failed to explain the comet. And we know 3I. Atlas is a comet. We see the coma. We see the tails. We see the jet. This is not a theory. It is an observation. And so, we are trapped. We are truly trapped. We are in a nightmare. Look at where we are. We have two natural hypotheses. Rung 1, the resilient wanderer. This model perfectly explains the comet. It explains the strength. It explains the volatility. It explains the sunward pointing jet. It creates a perfect, working, physical engine. It cannot explain the fuel. It cannot explain the nickel. Rung 2, the Star Eater's shard. This model perfectly explains the fuel. It explains the nickel. It explains the impossible chemistry. It creates a perfect, logical origin for the material. But it cannot explain the engine. It cannot explain the jet. It cannot explain the comet. One explains the action. The other explains the actor. And neither explains the object. Neither model works. The universe has, it seems, given us an object that is both. It is both a volatile, pressurized, cryovolcanic snowball and a monolithic, refined, metallic cannonball. It is a nickel-plated pressure vessel. This is a deeper paradox. This is a deeper failure. This is an impasse. Wait, can we save this rung? Can we combine them? What if it is a Star Eater's shard, a solid metal core that then, after it was formed, spent 1 billion years drifting through a cold, dense, interstellar, molecular cloud, a cloud of frozen water and gas, and got a frosting, a coating, a layer of normal ice on the outside. This is clever. This would give it ice. This would give it a normal coma. This would explain the normal tails. This saves rung 2. It's both. But does it? Does it truly? A frosting. A simple, external layer of ice. Would it do this? Would a frosting explode with the focused, directional, geological violence required to produce a sunward-punching jet? No. A frosting would just sublimate. It would fizz. It would create a normal coma. It would not, could not, create the impossible action. The impossible action, as we deduced in rung 1, demanded that the volatiles be trapped deep inside a solid, pressurized, monolithic structure. So, the frosting idea fails. And rung 2, the Star Eater's shard, fails. It fails just as completely, just as tragically as rung 1. And we are stuck. We are hanging. We have tried the most logical, natural explanation. It broke. We have tried the most exotic, natural explanation. It also broke. We are left with no natural explanation that fits the facts. The ladder of nature has run out of rungs, and still the object exists. The paradox, persists, and we must explain it. So, what is left when you have, with all the rigor and honesty you can muster, exhausted every single plausible, natural explanation, and all of them have failed? What what do you do? The rules of the ladder, the ultimate, final, terrifying rule, is that you are forced by your own logic, against all your training, against all your instincts, against all your comfort. You are forced to lift your hand to the final rung, the rung that is not natural, the rung that science never, ever wants to touch, the rung that, until this moment, we have refused to name, the hypothesis that the object is not a thing that was born, but a thing that was built. We are stuck. We are failed. We hang, suspended, between two broken rungs of logic in a void of our own making. Let us, once more, be honest about where we are. We have no natural explanation. Rung 1, the resilient wanderer, gave us a perfect engine, a solid, cryovolcanic monolith that could create the sunward jet, but it could not, in any logical way, explain the fuel, the impossible, refined nickel. It broke. Rung 2, the Star-Eater's shard, gave us a perfect, if terrifying, origin for that fuel, a cosmic refinery, a black hole that could create the impossible nickel. But it could not, in any logical way, explain the engine. A solid, cold, metal cannonball cannot produce a jet. It broke. One explains the action, the other explains the actor, and neither explains the object. Neither works. The universe has presented us with a contradiction, a working machine made of impossible materials. The logic is absolute. Our models of nature are exhausted, and still the object is, and still we must explain it. So, what is left? The ladder of scientific thought, of hypothesis. It demands that we climb. If the rungs of nature, even the most exotic and violent forms of nature, have failed, if they have broken under the weight of the evidence, then logic, cold, hard, and relentless logic, forces us to take the final step. It is a step we are terrified to take. It is a step that, for our entire history as a species, has been the domain of fantasy, of myth, of desire. It is a step that the sober, serious, and humble discipline of science never, ever wants to take. Because this is the last rung, the highest rung, the rung that is not tethered to nature at all. This is the hypothesis that 3I Atlas is not a thing that was born. It is a thing that was built. This is Kitchban 3, the artifact hypothesis. This is rung 3, and we are forced by our own failed logic to place our hand is upon it. We must. Not because we want to, not because it is exciting, but because it is the only explanation left on the table. It is the last resort. So, let us be scientists. Let us be cold. Let us not be emotional. Let us do our job. We must test this final, terrifying rung. We must hold this hypothesis to the exact same rigorous standard as all the others. Does this extraordinary claim, this unnatural explanation, truly solve all three paradoxes? Does it work? Let us test it. First, the impossible material, the impossible chemistry, the nickel, the missing iron, and the industrial gas. Does the artifact hypothesis explain this? The answer is immediate and cold and simple. Yes, it does not just explain it, it normalizes it, it trivializes it, it predicts it. In this model, the chemical signature is not a paradox, it is a design choice, a civilization, an intelligence, capable of building a vessel to cross the interstellar void, would, by necessity, be a master of metallurgy. They would not build their ship from dirty snow or fragile rubble. They would build it from refined materials. They would want a material that is strong, a material that is dense, a material that resists corrosion. Over 1 billion years of travel through the abrasive, irradiated interstellar medium, a material that is non-reactive, pure elemental nickel is exactly such a material. It is not a strange choice. It is an excellent, logical, engineering choice. And the process? The impossible separation of nickel from iron. This is not a cosmic riddle. This is not a black hole refinery. In this model, it is Tuesday. It is standard industry. It is metallurgy. 101. The Mond process. The industrial process that our invented in the 19th century does exactly this. It uses carbon monoxide to create nickel tetracarbonyl gas, which then separates the nickel from all other impurities, including iron. The impossible industrial gas that we saw is not a coincidence. It is evidence of the refining process itself. It is perhaps the residue, the exhaust. In this one, single, elegant, and terrifying move, rung 3 solves the entire chemical paradox. The paradox that broke rung 1. It holds. So, we continue the test. We must. What about the other 2 paradoxes? The impossible, contradictory physics, the fragile, strong koan. The object is both a strong, dense cannonball and a volatile, erupting snowball. How can this be? The artifact hypothesis looks at this, and it does not see a paradox. Sees machine. It sees a system. It is not a fragile, strong contradiction. It is design. It is a container and its contents. The object is strong. It is a dense, monolithic, resilient cannonball because it is a hull, a vessel. It was engineered, designed to be strong. It was built to contain pressure. It has to be, because inside that hull is the fuel, the propellant, the volatiles. The snowball is not the object. The snowball is in the object. It is cryogenically stored propellant. And this solves the impossible resilience. The object is not indestructible. It is manufactured. It is not fragile. It is fueled. And this perfectly, logically leads to the final paradox, the impossible action, the sunward pointing jet. In this model, this is not a jet. It is not a fissure. It is not a geyser. It is not a comet tail. It is thrust. It is a directional, propulsive blast. It is the engine. The vessel, the hull, is designed to channel its propellant, its volatiles, out through a nozzle, a focused, controlled vent, and the jet, the river flowing uphill, is not magic. It is propulsion. It is exactly what a rocket engine does. It overpowers the environment by design. It creates its own uphill. And so we stop and we look and we see the ladder is complete and the result is chilling. Rung 1, the resilient wanderer, failed. Rung 2, the Star Eater's shard, failed. Rung 3, the artifact hypothesis, the most extraordinary, implausible, insane explanation of all is the only one that works. It is the only hypothesis that we have that is not broken by the evidence. It is the only explanation that takes all three impossible contradictions and solves them. It unifies them. It turns them from paradoxes into design features. The impossible material is the hull. The impossible resilience is the container. The impossible action is the engine. They are not three different puzzles. They are one single working machine. This is the state of our knowledge. This is the cold, hard, logical impasse that we are in, and now we must scientists, we must be sober. This is not proof. This is not truth. This is not a discovery. This is a hypothesis. It is an argument made of failure. It is the only rung left standing. After all, the natural ones have collapsed. The artifact hypothesis is not proven. It is just not disproven. It hauntingly, frighteningly fits. And so, this is the true, terrible drama of the 72-hour wait. This is everything, because The crucible, the perihelion, the test has changed. It is no longer a simple physical test. It is not just about, will it survive? Look at our ladder. Kichban one rung one. 3i Atlas is a resilient wanderer. It is a strong rock. It is under immense stress. It might survive. It might break. It is a test of geology. Kichban 2 rung 2. If 3i Atlas is a Star Eater's shard, it is a solid metal cannonball. It will do nothing. It will easily survive. It will emerge unscathed, silent, victorious, inert. It is a test of metallurgy. But Kitban Ba Rung 3, if Mbai ATLAS is an artifact, if it is a vessel, a machine, then the question, will it survive, is meaningless. Of course, it will survive. It was designed to do this. It crossed an ocean to get here. It is not going to be killed by a candle. The test is not, will it survive? The true test, the real, unspoken question that is hanging in the silence behind the Sunday is so much deeper. It is. Will it react? Is this a test of geology or metallurgy? Or is it a test of intent? Is this just a flyby? Or is this an operation? Is it using the sun's gravity in a slingshot maneuver? Is that jet, that engine off right now as it coasts in silence? Or will it fire? Will it fire at perihelion to adjust its course, to slow down, to change to its destination? Is it just passing through, or is it here to stay? We are not just watching a rock melt. We might be waiting to see if a stranger is going to knock on the door. This is the true stakes. This is the abyss of thought that this one small object has opened beneath our feet. And the answer is not in our models. It is happening right now in the fire. And so we wait. That is all. That is the end of the analysis. After all the data, all the observations, all the frantic, brilliant, and agonizing work of the human mind, after climbing a ladder of logic, only to find that every rung of nature broke beneath our feet, we are left, in the end, with the most ancient, the most fundamental, and the most human of all conditions. We are waiting. This is not the impatient, nervous, frustrated waiting of our daily terrestrial lives. It is not the waiting for a message to arrive. It is not the waiting for a pot to boil or for a storm to pass. This is a different quality of time. This is a cosmic pause, a sacred vigil. It is, as the chapter of our story suggests, tro, cheye, cherdoi, the waiting game. But it is a game in which we are not the players. We are not even the spectators. We are the board. The game is being played upon us by the universe itself, and the pieces are moving in a place we are forbidden to see. All of our power, all of our knowledge, all of our technology, our great, glittering mechanical eyes on the desolate summits of mountains, our billion-dollar robotic sentinels floating in the perfect silent void, our supercomputers capable of simulating the births of galaxies. All of it, all of it is rendered utterly, completely impotent. We can do nothing. We cannot accelerate the orbits. We cannot peer through the nuclear, blinding fire of our own star. We cannot, by force of will, or by the sheer, desperate desire to know, change the outcome. We are children. We are forced by the sheer, unfeeling, unyielding, and majestic laws of physics to be small, to be patient, to be humble. We are, in this moment, no different from our most distant, ancient ancestors. We are like the people of a long-forgotten tribe, huddled in the dark, staring at the sky, waiting. We are the ancients, watching the eclipse. Imagine, truly, feel, what that was. To live in a world that was built, founded, guaranteed by the promise that the sun will rise, that the light is eternal, that this is the law, this is normal, and then, one day, in the middle of the day, without warning, a shadow begins to eat the light. A bite is taken from the god. The normal breaks. The foundation of all reality itself cracks, and terror sets in. Not the fear of a predator, but a profound metaphysical, existential terror. The fear that the rules have failed, that the universe has broken, and all you can do is sit in that new, unfamiliar, cold darkness and watch and wait and ask the void, the one question that matters. Will the light return? We are those people right now. Our sun, our God, our source of light was not the star in the sky. Our Sunday was our certainty. Our Sunday was our loneliness. It was the absolute, foundational, comforting knowledge that we are alone, that the universe is vast and empty and natural and dead. A place of magnificent accidents. A place we could understand. It was the knowledge that we knew the rules, that physics was king, that all things were natural, and 3I Atlas is the object that has moved in front of our Sunday. It has blotted out our certainty. It has eclipsed our loneliness. It has broken our rules. It has shattered every natural on our ladder. It has forced us to sit in a new, unfamiliar, intellectual darkness. The shadow it casts is not physical. It is logical. It is philosophical. It is the cold, dark, perfect, articulate, haunting shadow of rung 3. The shadow of an idea that we cannot disprove. The shadow of a possibility that we do not know how to live with. The shadow of a machine. And so we wait. We wait in this new darkness. We wait for late November. We wait for the orbits to turn. We wait to be allowed to look again. We are not waiting for the object to emerge from the sun's blinding light. We are waiting for us, for humanity to emerge from the object's chilling shadow. We are waiting to find out if our sun, our normal, our lonely, natural, dead, understood universe will ever return, or if we are now living in a new world, a different world, a stranger world, a world that we no longer understand at all. This is the true stakes of the waiting game. It is not a scientific curiosity. It is an existential vigil. We are all of us right now, like that ancient tribe huddled together in the dark, looking up and listening in silence. And so we find ourselves in this great, profound planetary pause. We are suspended together in the most powerful and creative of all human states, the state of not knowing. We are transfixed by the outcome. We are desperate to know which of the three Ban, which of the three realities will be the one that greets us in the cold, clear light of late November? Will the curtain of fire, that blinding nuclear veil of our sun, finally rise to reveal scenario 1? Will we train our telescopes, our hearts in our throats, to find the resilient wanderer? Will we see a single natural geological object, perhaps diminished, perhaps fractured by its ordeal, but whole? Will we see an object that is just a comet? A comet, yes, but of a kind we have never seen, a stronger, denser, tougher breed of comet. A visitor from a star system that builds its wanderers to last. This, in itself, would be a glorious discovery. It would not be a return to normal. It would be an expansion of normal. It would tell us that our solar system is not the only blueprint. It would tell us that nature hates a monoculture, that she builds her worlds, her comets, her very families, with a more varied, creative, and robust imagination than we ever knew. It would be more knowledge. It would be more. And it would be, in its own beautiful and profound way, reassuring. It would tell us that the rules of nature, the rules, they are just grander and more complex than we thought. Or will that curtain rise to reveal scenario 2, the Star Eater's shard? Will we find a single, inert, silent, undamaged, metallic point of light? A bullet made of pure, refined nickel, a cannonball that survived the fire easily, contemptuously, because it is dead. An object with no new coma, no new jet, an object that proves our most exotic, violent hypothesis was correct, an object that confirms that black holes are cosmic refineries, that they do eat planets and spit out shrapnel. This, too, would be a revolution, a terrifying, awe-inspiring revelation. It would confirm that we live in a universe of such epic violence, of such exotic physics, that stars are from that feast is drifting silently through our own home. It would be a new, gothic and majestic understanding of the cosmos. Or will that curtain rise on scenario 3? Will we find neither? Will we find the artifact? Will we detect a change, a burn, a course correction? Will we find that the jet, the engine, fired at perihelion, precisely, logically, using the sun's gravity to brake, to slow down, to shift its trajectory from a hyperbolic escape to a closed ellipse, to enter into an orbit? Will it stay? Will the silence of our vigil be broken by the realization that it is not leaving? We are hypnotized by this choice. We crave the answer. We yearn for the certainty of one of these realities. But this is the final lesson. This is the true philosophical gift of Ba ATL ATLAS. This is the Tumgung Govuchu, the mirror of the universe, in a profound and very real sense. The specific answer does not matter. The verdict is secondary. Why? Because the revolution has already happened. The change in us is already complete. The true message was not the answer. The true message, the question itself, the fact that this object existed at all, the fact that its data was so anomalous, so contradictory, that it forced us, the supposed masters of our lonely island, to build a ladder of hypotheses, and that every single rung of normal nature broke beneath our feet. The fact that rung 3, the artifact hypothesis, is not disproven. That is the revelation. For all these months, we thought we were studying it. We thought we were the subjects, and it was the object. We aimed our machines at it. We dissected its light. We plotted its course. We judged it. We arrogantly tried to force it into one of our tiny conceptual boxes. You are a comet. You must be a rock. Rules. And it refused. It silently, patiently broke every box we built for it. And now, in this final, quiet pause, as we sit in the darkness of our own failed certainty, we realize the truth. We were not looking at it at all. It was a mirror, a perfect, cold, interstellar mirror, and in its reflection, we are forced to see ourselves. And what do we see? We do not see a master of the cosmos. We see a species that is still in its crib. We see the astounding limits of our knowledge. We see the laughable smallness of our normal. We see the terrifying fragility of our certainty. We see that our textbooks are not Bibles. They are napkins with scribbles on them. This is the one truth, that its mere existence is forces is us to confront, regardless is of the answer. This is the point. It doesn't matter which kitban is true. Look at them. Look at the possibilities. Rung 1 tells us that nature is stranger and more varied than we dreamed. Rung 2 tells us that the universe is a place of cosmic violence and alchemy that we cannot comprehend. Rung 3 tells us that we are not alone. All three possibilities, all three answers are revolutions. All three answers shout the same message at us. They all confirm the same truth that we had forgotten, that the universe is not the small, safe, lonely, understood, predictable place that we so desperately wanted it to be, that the script we wrote for it is child's play, that the ocean is infinitely wider, older, stranger, and more profoundly full of wonders and terrors and mysteries than our small island minds have ever dared to imagine. The mirror it holds up simply shows us that our box is too small, and that revelation has already happened. We are already changed. We can never go back to the world before this question was asked. Its journey, its physical passage through our home, through this small, warm, sunlit garden, is, in the grand scheme, nothing. It is a moment, a cosmic breath. By the time we have our answer, by the time we see what has emerged from the fire, it will already be leaving. It is falling away from us, fleeing back into the cold and the dark from which it came. Its velocity is too great. Its destiny is elsewhere. It will not return. In a few years, it will be a faint smudge, visible only to our greatest telescopes. In a few decades, it will be gone, gone forever, a fading, silent, departing ghost. Its life in our solar system, its entire, dramatic, reality-shattering performance, will be shorter than a single human lifetime. But our encounter with it is not its journey. Its journey is ancient. Its journey is unimaginable. Millions, perhaps tens of millions, perhaps billions of years of drifting, a long, silent, perfect sleep in the endless, frozen velvet night between the stars. This is the true context, and in that context, our planet, our Sunday, our entire home is not a destination. It was just a thing. It happened to pass in the dark, a gravitational speed bump, a momentary interruption in an eternal voyage. It is fleeting. But for us, the sleepers on the island, this fleeting moment is everything. This is the final magic of the mirror. In the last moment, we stop looking at ourselves in it. We stop seeing our own ignorance, our own smallness, our own failed certainty. We turn the mirror around. We dare to look back along the path it came. We look out ocean and we ask the final question. The Kohai Venya. The question about home. If this one object, this one single, solitary wanderer, this bottle cast into the void, if it found us by sheer blind random chance, if the ocean is so vast and our island is so impossibly small, then for this one bottle to wash ashore, what does that imply? It implies one of two things. We are the luckiest beings in the history of the galaxy, that we alone intercepted the one single messenger in a trillion years, an improbability so great it borders on a miracle, or the ocean is not empty, that it is not a void, that it is full of bottles, full of driftwood, full of shards and wanderers and messengers, that we are not an island, we are part of an archipelago, that out there, in the dark, between the stars that we thought was so barren and dead. There are countless homes, countless nurseries birthing these objects, like the one in rung 1, countless star eaters shattering planets and creating these shards, like the one in rung 2, countless somethings building them, like the one in rung 3. This is the true implication of 3i Atlas. Its presence is a statistic. A single data point, yes, but it is not zero, and that statistic proves that our loneliness is an illusion. The galaxy is connected not by choice, not by will or intention, but by physics, by gravity, by time. It is a single vast ecosystem that is constantly sharing a material, a slow, grand, galactic tide that washes debris from one shore to another. And if it is sharing rocks and shards and whatever else it is sharing, what else is on that tide? Is it sharing the seeds of life, the chemicals, the amino acids? Is this how our own island, ocean, was seeded 4 billion years ago? Did something just like 3i Atlas, but older, crash here in Earth's infancy and deliver the spark? Is that who we are? Are we the descendants of an ancient interstellar driftwood? This is the final question that the mirror leaves us with. The journey to understand the universe was never really about the universe. It was always a journey to understand our own origin, a journey to answer the one question that has haunted us since we first looked up in wonder. Who are we? And 3i Atlas, whatever it is, rock, shard, or ship, has just given us the most profound clue we have ever received. The clue is simple. You are not from here. You are not special. You are not alone. The ocean is full, and it is coming to visit. Look up.